these astronauts. So they were looking at that flight termination system because also what's important here is that they need to make sure that this rocket goes where it's intended to go. Because if it starts going in another direction, they need to be able to self-destruct it safely.
All right, Gio, thanks so much. And it does sound like they are going to go. We do want to listen in. The flight director is pulling all the people in launch control to see if it is, in fact, all systems go. Let's listen.
Safety controls go. LPEs go. RTDs go. Houston flight is go. Rockets go. And CDR. Crews go. Copy that. Thank you, Reed. And Launch Director NTD, our launch team is ready to proceed at this time.
All right, NTD, I copy all. At this time, I'll perform my poll. Attention on the net. This is the Launch Director performing the final poll for launch, verifying no constraints, and go for launch. EGS, Program Chief Engineer.
Artemis Chief Engineers are go.
Copy, thank you. EGS, Chief Safety Officer.
Artemis CSOs are go.
Copy, thank you. Range weather.
Launch weather is go.
Thank you, LWO. And Artemis MMT Chair.
MMTs go.
Thank you, John. And Integrity Launch Director.
Good to hear your voice, Charlie. ELT. Thank you, Charlie. This is Victor. We are going for our families. MS1.
This is Christina. We are going for our e-gaming.
MS2.
It sounded like we just heard the pilot, Victor Glover's voice there. Susan, I want to bring you back in here as a former NASA astronaut. Just give us a sense of what the astronauts are doing in these the final moments before launch.
I copy that.
They just are hearing the magical word. Everybody is reporting in go for launch. So time will actually compress for them. The next few minutes is going to go very quickly once they start that clock back up.
You are the youngest person, one of only 3 women to pilot the space shuttle. What's your reaction to seeing the first woman operate this mission?
You know, it's great to see, one, it's Charlie Blackwell-Thompson being launch control director. It's great to see Christina Cook being on the mission and being the first woman to go nude. But really, I think that the group said it best, is that we're looking forward to a time when we're all just astronauts. We're not black astronauts, white astronauts, women or men. We're just astronauts.
Fair enough, Susan. I want to listen in one more time.
Start and verify recordings of our Orion cameras. Copy.
Okay, well there you heard it.
RSR NTD. RSR.
They're getting ready to start terminal count.
May on rotation enable at this time, please.
It's currently at T-minus 10 minutes. Once we wrap up this last bit of work,
Arm rotation enable complete.
we're going to start that clock.
Yeah, thank you. Integrity crew, close and lock visors.
Gio, give us a sense as we await the clock to start the countdown again. How is the crowd responding at this moment?
It was transitory.
Well, Lindsay, I can tell you the moment we heard all those go, everyone on board, and they're going to be going off into space. And so everyone here is incredibly excited to see that happen.
4 p.m. Eastern time.
Dr. O'Shea, how is the moon really a proving ground for Mars? Because we know there are a number of stages here, and this may be step number 2 in a multitude.
Absolutely. So living outside of the Earth's atmosphere and outside of its magnetic protective magnetosphere is a big deal. Living under radiation, living on the lunar environment with that incredibly difficult dust you have to deal with on the lunar surface are just challenges that you cannot simulate very well here on Earth. So they have to go there. We have to put boots on the ground. We got to do the real experiment. And then hopefully living on the surface of Mars should be a little easier than living on the surface of the moon because it does have an atmosphere.
ECL time estimate.
You'll likely remember in 1970, Gil Scott-Heron wrote a really scathing poem about the inequality, about essentially saying, why spend billions of dollars going and leaving this planet when people are not able to pay their rent and struggling paying medical bills back here on Earth? A number of people really have that question. How do you answer that?
Well, first thing I want to say is I saw Gil Scott-Heron live at the Kibbles East in Oakland years ago, and that was amazing. But, you know, that is a question that comes up often. It can look like a waste of money, but in reality, it is an investment in our future. What we see is that those nations that invest in cutting-edge technologies and cutting-edge science, they are ultimately the winners. When Albert Einstein won his Nobel Prize, when he described the photoelectric effect, he couldn't tell you that in the future this was going to result in the smartphone, right? And in much the same way, as we undertake these endeavors, which are an investment, they do return to America and to the nation in terms of technologies, in terms of new economies, then those new generations are going to reap benefits that we can't even imagine. And the other thing is how economics works. It's not exactly the case that if you spend money, you're taking it from somewhere else, right? We see that. Big pots of money comes up when needs come up. But this is just less, NASA's budget is less than 1% of the federal government, and it is an investment that pays off big time.
All right, and we're clear from
Give us a sense, too, because when we look back to the Apollo mission in the 60s, and that was, as you know, a very unsettled time. We believe in the meantime they are about to resume the clock in a moment. But it was a very unsettled time, obviously, in the 60s, as it is today. Some people say that 1968, and if we can see the clock, maybe we can take a live look because they are now resuming the countdown. And Gio, I imagine there was a lot of excitement when that clock started ticking down again.
Well, that is exactly how I knew it was happening, because everyone started cheering. There are people who are clapping still here, and they just keep coming. They keep coming because, again, these are all folks here at the Kennedy Space Center who have worked on this for so many years to get Orion into space. Because remember, you're talking about this monumental mission that eventually could create a lunar base and have that base serve as sort of a pit stop to the rest of the universe, including perhaps even Mars. That is years away, but this is the beginning, and we could see that history being made within 9 minutes and 11 seconds right there.
9 minutes, the countdown resumes. And Dr. O'Shea, as I was mentioning earlier, as we know, President Trump is expected to address the American people tonight about the war. Similarly, in the 60s, we were in a time of war. Many people, when we went to the moon for the first time, it was an unsettling time. But many people describe that launch of Apollo 8 as a unifying moment in the country. Do you see some parallels between then and now?
Well, I do, but I have a biased look, right? So I lead the nation's oldest national astronomy organization, the Astro Society, and we're leading this Astronomy 250 celebration of 250 years of American astronomy and space. So I'm talking to the enthusiasts at all times. But at the same time, we do have challenges here in our nation and globally. And that's the thing about us humans, right? While awful things are happening, amazing things are happening. And this is a part of that amazingness that shows you what we're capable of when we work together. So let's keep doing more of this. Let's keep investing in our future.
Including today's launch, this Artemis 2 mission will last for 10 days. The centerpiece of it, that figure 8 slingshot move around the dark side of the moon. I do want to look and listen.
Astronauts took to.
After about a day in orbit, the engine on Orion's service module performs the critical translunar injection burn, a rocket boost that will send the astronauts on a free return trajectory toward the moon. This figure-8 flight path uses the Earth and Moon's gravity to take the astronauts around the moon and back home, a journey of more than 230,000 miles. It takes about 4 days to reach the moon, culminating with a lunar flyby. The crew will be the first people to see the far side of the moon in more than 50 years. NASA expects a communications blackout during this period. Earth's gravity then pulls Orion back during its 4-day trip home. Orion is equipped with a heat shield that keeps the crew safe from re-entry temperatures that can reach 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The Orion enters Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour, using parachutes and the drag of the atmosphere to slow its descent to less than 20 miles per hour. The 10-day mission ends with Orion crew splashing down in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California.
and the crew access arm has been retracted. That's what we saw just a few moments ago. That's the way that the astronauts come and go from the spacecraft. And we've mentioned 4 astronauts on board. Reed Wiseman, former NASA chief astronaut, U.S. Navy test pilot. He has spent 165 days in space before. Sadly, his wife passed away years ago from cancer, and now as he leaves for the next 10 days, he leaves his young girls behind. Victor J. Glover Jr., NASA astronaut and U.S. Navy captain, is actually will be the first black man to go to the moon and beyond. Christina Cook, Artemis II mission specialist. She holds the record for the longest single space flight by a woman. She spent 328 days in space, just shy of a year. Jeremy Hansen, Artemis II mission specialist, Canadian Space Agency astronaut. He will be the first non-American to go to the moon. He has joked that if something goes wrong, NASA will have to blame Canada. Gio, what's the clock telling us right now? 5 minutes, 16 seconds.
This is getting real, Lindsay. 5 minutes away, and that's just incredible. You know, one of the other things that's really awesome about these astronauts, because I've been able to speak with a lot of them, is that, for the lack of a better phrase, they're really down to earth. Aside from being so incredibly smart, they are so down to earth. They are real, amazing people. And one of the things they all tell me, all astronauts tell me, is that the moment they get up in space and they look out that window and they see that brilliant crystal blue ball of Earth, they see us all as one. And that's where it really hits them, and it really resonates that we are one in terms of being one human race. It's just quite incredible what they say. They call it a spiritual experience to be up there and see the Earth like that. And so, as you said, Christina Cook, 328 days in space, an incredibly long time in space already. You are talking about people who are truly space vets, and they are going up there now to do this incredibly monumental task.
Reed Wiseman, to your point, Gio, talked about being down on Earth and looking up at the moon in recent nights and thinking, the next time I see the same sight from the ground, I will have been there. And you just have to imagine, Susan, that this moment is super exciting. You've been there before. Kind of walk us through the nerves, the excitement, just the magnitude of the moment.
It is pure excitement. I don't recall any nerves. Jeremy especially, this is his first flight, so this is his first opportunity going to space. And pretty soon, everything's going to become on internal power. They will no longer be connected to external power, and then we've got a few minutes to go.
And we're looking at pictures of you, Susan, when you were in space. Of course, astronaut is a Greek word for star sailor. Just walk us through what's going to happen. We know that it's just going to take 8 minutes, Susan, for them to get into orbit. Give us a little preview of what we're about to see here.
Okay, you're going to see the engine light, and for those down at the Kennedy Space Center, they're going to feel this. 6 seconds later, those rockets are going to fire once the computer has determined that the engines are working well. And then off they go. And it's almost like it levitates off the pad. It's not like it zooms off the pad. It basically levitates off the pad. And then it quickly gets up within a minute, supersonic speeds. And in 2 minutes, the rockets are going to come off. And it goes up to, I think, 4 Gs to get to 17,500 miles an hour.
That's almost approaching the 2-minute mark. Just want to listen in for a moment.
The rocket to internal, taking ground power away and now going to battery power.
GLS's go for upper stage internal power.
All right, power is removed from the rocket's upper stage, the ICPS, and it's been switched to battery. Same milestone for the lower core stage coming up at T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds. Right now, the 4-person Artemis II crew is 248,000 miles away from the moon. And if all goes well, They will fly by it in 6 days.
TLS's go for core stage to internal power.
All right, there's the rocket's core stage, which houses 3 flight computers, is now on its own power. There's no more hold time because there's no more margin on these batteries. So we have to recycle back to T-minus 10 to recharge if we had a hold.
One minute.
Right now, the rocket does not know what the T0 is, but coming up at T-minus 33 seconds, control shifts from the ground launch sequencer to the rocket's onboard autonomous launch sequencer, or ALS. The rocket will count itself down, but honor any holds that could come from the ground. Now, shortly after liftoff, Houston will take control of the rocket, and my colleague Gary Jordan will take over commentary.
TLS's go for ALS.
Great call out. The rocket is on its own. 4 brave explorers ready to ride the most powerful rocket NASA has ever launched. Sound suppression water is flowing. And here we go. 10,
9, 8, 7, 6,
RS-25
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take off!
Liftoff. The crew of Artemis 2 now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Good roll pitch.
Roger, roll pitch.
Houston now controlling the flight of integrity on the Artemis 2 mission around the moon.
Integrity, AMT high.
On time has 30 seconds. Integrity passes the ultimate target milestone. Mission Control Houston seeing good performance on the lower engines. Space Launch System core stage. Integrity 3 miles in altitude. Traveling more than 1,200 miles per hour.
Humanity's next great voyage begins. We
Mr.
just
Last
heard
time,
it here. The
passing 1
baton
minute.
has been passed from launch control in Florida to mission control in Houston. Gio, give us a sense of what you're seeing and feeling on the ground there.
Have you the same?
Lindsay, I cannot look away, quite frankly. I cannot look away because this is just so spectacular. You are talking about a spacecraft that has just made the entire ground here just shake. It vibrates up your body. I always tell people, make sure your feet are on the ground. Make sure that you are feeling it. And we are seeing a gorgeous, gorgeous liftoff here. There is not a cloud in the sky. All of Florida at this point should have been able to see that launch and still see this out in the sky, just as you're seeing it right there on TV right now. It's truly incredible. The sounds you feel, the emotion you feel as that vibration moves through your body. It's quite incredible, Lindsay.
A mission with so much promise. You see the faces there, all eyes looking upward, capturing this moment. The rocket boosters are about to separate. They have just separated. What a day for humanity and space exploration, Dr. Oluseyi.
Oh my goodness. I was holding my breath. I'm always both excited and scared during a launch. This is spectacular. I wish I was there.
No one really expects to be able to bear witness to something like this. As I said earlier, if you're under the age of 55, you haven't seen it. What does it mean to you to see this?
Well, this is a new frontier. We are now going back to that frontier of the moon. We are a new America. We are a new planet Earth. And now this is the next step. This is the very beginning. And hopefully this will become a common occurrence.
250,000-mile trip that they're about to take to get to the moon. Susan, give us a sense of your reaction here.
I think it was picture perfect. It couldn't have been any better. They've still got a few minutes before main engine cutoff when they get
is going through in this moment?
We see you stay on board, Sam. And Houston has you loud and clear on Peters at the common line.
Back in their seats, which is part of the reason that they lay down flat when they load into the Orion capsule. And then once they reach that MECO, that main engine cutoff, they'll be waiting.
Glover, Cook, and Hansen cross.
Their bodies will start adapting over the next few hours and few days to be better prepared to live and work in space.
Checks to verify.
Talk to us about the medical system that's on board Orion and the health medical research that they have. Well, first, I do want to take a listen again. Doctor, I want to bring you back in there. Same question to you. The medical system on board on Orion and the health medical research that they have access to as well.
Well, the cornerstone of this mission really is looking at how the human being integrates into a larger engineering system like a rocket ship. So a lot of the systems on the rockets, they behave predictably. We can test them to failure. But the human being often are prone to failure randomly. Tonight I could go home and have appendicitis. But then we also are resilient and innovative and creative. And so the big point of this mission is really how our human systems, how the life support systems help support our crew, and make sure that this vehicle will report as we push further and further to the moon and further into space.
Integrity, of course, the name that the crew actually gave their spacecraft.
5 minutes, 20 seconds of mission elapsed time into the Artemis 2 mission. At this point, 3 good main engines are all that's needed to carry Integrity to a nominal main engine cutoff target. Though at this time, we're saying 4 good engines here in Mission Control Houston. Integrity, 75 miles in altitude, 330 miles downrange, approaching 10,000 miles per hour.
10,000 miles per hour. We just saw a few fist pumps and, of course, applause there on the ground. And that capsule is the size of 2 minivans. So you have 4 people who are going to be spending the next 10 days. Of course, there's a little more space, actually, because no gravity in there. You can actually kind of float around above. Susan, I understand that it's typical for these missions for you to bring a little stuffed animal, and I understand that they have a little plushie that was actually designed by a second grader, a plushie toy named Rise, actually, and it is the official zero-G indicator, an object that basically is designed to indicate to the crew when they're able to float, because of course they are strapped in. Did you have something similar like that? So you kind of wait to see that stuffed animal float to get a sense of that you have reached the official zero-G.
Lindsay, we did not, and I don't know when that became popular, but as soon as the engine's cut off, even though you're strapped in, you float into the strap. And so you know it instantly.
Throttling down as we approach the abort once around option. Milestone at the 7-minute 30-second mark.
And we're about to hear main engine cutoff, or MECO.
Miles downrange, traveling more than 15,000 miles per hour.
Integrity, AOA open. AOA open.
The window is now open for an abort once around option that would target splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. Still following nominal ascent at this time.
Dr. Oluche, give us an understanding of once they arrive at the moon in several more days.
System core stage.
As we're hearing now, they're about to have the engine cut off in 10 seconds. They may not even have to really use their engines, because a lot of this slingshot maneuver, as we're describing, a lot of it, the pull of the gravity from the moon will bring them back.
Yes, when you are a physics student, sometimes you take a class called orbital mechanics. And what you learn is that motion in space is not like motion here on the surface of the Earth. You actually are doing orbits no matter where you're going.
We need to stay on board, Sam.
listening in for the clues to see where we are right now.
We have a nominal main engine cutoff heading in the right trajectory on the way to swing around the moon. Core stage has separated, done its job. Space Launch System upper stage, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, or ICPS, still attached to the Orion spacecraft.
And Susan, it sounds like this has been a textbook launch. Everything has gone exactly as planned.
Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook.
That's exactly right, Lindsay. It was textbook.
Beginning of their journey.
Dr. Anderson, I want to bring you back in here. I understand that you just returned from a Mars Desert Research Station in Utah, trying to understand how to survive in Mars, because that could be the ultimate step here that this mission is heading us toward. What did that entail?
Yeah, so we have a course at the University of Colorado where we take engineering students and we teach them kind of the fundamentals of medicine and how that might apply in a spaceflight environment. We believe that the solutions to a lot of the challenges around human health in spaceflight are going to require medical operations, they're going to require clinicians, and they're going to require engineers. So our goal is to get folks together, put them through complex simulations, and start working the problem and figuring out how we can keep people healthy and happy and productive on the moon or Mars.
And what are some possible medical advances in particular that could ultimately result from a mission like this?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think we want to be sure that this vehicle performs the way we expect. One thing that people keep talking about is radiation. The radiation environment outside of the Earth's atmosphere and outside of the Earth's orbit is much higher. And so we want to better understand how high energy particles might affect human beings, and that can translate back to therapeutics and approaches to human health back here on Earth.
And of course, Dr. O'Shea, you were mentioning earlier that there is this geopolitical race. Give us a sense of why we are trying to get back to the moon before China, for example.
Yeah, you have China, you have the European Space Agency, you have a lot of private companies that are setting their sights on the moon. But yet and still, NASA is still the leader. And this is a demonstration of NASA's technical leadership. But one thing I also want to mention is we went to a visualization, and conspiracy theorists have hit on the fact that we get video close to ground, but then we go to a visualization in space. And that's because there isn't a second camera up there to look at the spacecraft. So it is not a conspiracy. It is the best you can do.
Susan, what are you watching for as a former NASA astronaut as you were watching these pictures?
The launch and entry suit.
I'm looking towards the next steps. So the next big one is the solar array deploying. And they don't deploy, they don't go anywhere. So they come back to Earth. So every step of the way there's a burn coming up soon. The circular rides their low Earth orbit before they go into higher Earth orbit.
I want to bring in historian Jim Bell, professor at Arizona State University, the School of Earth and Space Exploration. Thanks so much for joining us on this momentous occasion, Professor. You've talked before about this being a dress rehearsal at full scale. What did you mean by that?
Well, nobody has gone beyond low Earth orbit for more than 50 years. Right? So this crew, this amazing heroic crew, I still got goosebumps. They are pathfinders, right? They're pathfinders for the astronauts that are going to go back to the surface of the moon, pathfinders for the astronauts who are going to launch on Mars eventually. So it really is historic.
Of course, we heard from Susan earlier saying that at one point we're looking forward to the day when this is just about humans. But of course, this crew does represent a much more diverse humanity than Apollo did, with the first woman, first person of color, first non-American to travel the lunar distance. What does that mean to you?
Well, look, I mean, these are incredible, heroic professionals, right? They're scientists, they're engineers, they're heavily trained individuals. They're representatives of the entire planet heading out to beyond our planet, out to our near celestial neighbor. So I'm incredibly proud, and all of us are incredibly proud of the work that they're doing, and the crew thousands of engineers and scientists and managers, administrators supporting them. It's really incredible.
And I want to bring in Cody Page, an engineer, professor of mechanical engineering at Columbia. Your reaction, Cody, is as you watch this?
I'm so inspired, tearing up. I feel like I'm witnessing history. This is such an exciting moment for all of us. I'm, as a woman in engineering and as a Canadian, I feel especially attached to the crew that's going, and just seeing this is incredible. Really being a part of history right now.
What does this mean for space flight?
This is a huge moment for spaceflight. We talk about the Apollo era, we talk about the shuttle era, and this is truly the beginning of the Artemis era. This is a shift from humans being in low Earth orbit and our focus really being in low Earth orbit for so many years now, and going back into deep space. This is changing the focus of NASA and hopefully of countries around the world. As we can see, Canadians and there's payloads from different countries around the world that are part of this mission. This is the beginning of a new era.
It's my understanding that these astronauts are going to be able to see aspects of the moon, the far side of the moon, that have never been seen by human eyes before. What might we expect them to observe? And I also understand that they may lose communication with mission control for a period of time while the moon is blocking or kind of in between them and Earth for a short amount of time. But what might we be able to glean from them being able to see the far side of the moon?
Yeah, it's incredibly exciting. They're going to be able to see parts of the moon that have never been seen before, and part of that I mentioned before that our brains are really the most exciting part of what's going there, and they're going to be looking at geological features on the lunar surface that can tell us about its formation, about where we're going to be going at the South Pole, about how we might find water ice on the moon, which is going to be extremely important when we have the Artemis 4 astronauts go and be able to land on the surface of the moon. And a big part of going, the communication aspect of that and using communication is being able to test this communication on the far side of the moon and be able to test in real time. So they're actually going to have scientists involved in this portion of the mission and be able to talk to the astronauts and discuss with them what they're finding. So part of that blackout is going to be the astronauts really making use of their knowledge of the geology of the moon.
And Cody, stay with us here. When NASA announced its intention to return to the moon, they said they were going back to stay. And recently they shared its blueprint for building a moon base. In the first phase of the $20 billion plan called Build, Test, Learn, they'll work with commercial space partners to send rovers, instruments, and technology to the lunar surface between now and 2028. In phase 2, between 2029 and 2033, they'll deliver the early infrastructure, building a semi-habitable area for astronauts. At this point, astronauts will be able to live and work on the moon's surface on a regular basis, which is really phenomenal. And during phase 3, slated for 2033 to 2036, NASA and its partners will deliver larger habitats and vehicles to the moon, establishing a permanent human presence on lunar surface. For the moon-based plan to be able to work, NASA is going to need a lot of help from its commercial space partners, especially SpaceX and Blue Origin. Both companies are building lunar landers capable of transporting astronauts from the Orion capsule to the lunar surface. SpaceX is working on a version of its Starship spacecraft. Blue Origin calls its craft the Blue Moon Lander. NASA is planning to test these landers during the Artemis 3 mission in 2027, not on the moon, but in Earth's orbit. Artemis 4 and 5 in 2028 could see one or both of these lunar landers actually take astronauts to the moon's surface. And Dr. Olubshe, I want to bring you back in here because when we're talking about NASA and the history, it sounds like this really could be one of the last solo missions from NASA. This is really kind of old school NASA playbook, but we know that it is a little less expensive, still very expensive, but to use some of the private companies like Blue Origin and SpaceX. So in the next few steps of this phase, it sounds like these private companies will very much be a part of the plan.
Absolutely. And in a way, they always have been, right? And that's one of the big difficulties about creating a spacecraft like this, is the fact that you have all these components coming from multiple vendors that are providing systems that have to be integrated into one complete system that has to work flawlessly. But America has been really good throughout the 20th century and into the 21st century in funding fundamental research, turning that into commercial products, spinning off private companies, and you have this government, university, private company ecosystem that has kept us at the cutting edge of technology for the planet. And we need to continue investing.
Cody, I want to bring you back in here, and we talked quite a bit about radiation. Why is it so important to learn about radiation in deep space?
So in deep space, we experience radiation in two formats. So there's the galactic cosmic radiation, which is a consistent background radiation that comes from supernova deep in space. And this is these really fast, really heavy ions that can be extremely damaging for humans. And then there's also the danger of radiation that can come from solar particle events. So these are flares that are coming from our sun that we sometimes see in our magnetosphere. And these can be very dangerous. There were some Apollo missions that came very close to some solar particle events. So we want to better understand that radiation in deep space so that we can make sure that for future missions, we're able to protect our astronauts from that radiation.
Gio, I want to go back to you. Give us a sense, are the crowds still there, kind of basking in the afterglow, so to speak, or are people packing up?
They're basking, but they're starting to get back to work because they were here working. But you know, Lindsay, it struck me as I was watching, all of our hearts were racing as we approached that final countdown. I'm sure that's what you felt too. And so I've asked astronauts, what is it that you're feeling in those final moments when you're there on that spaceship? And basically, I was trying to find out, how do you deal with all that stress? It could help all of us, right? And they basically said, you know what, Gio? We relax into it because we've prepared. And what we witnessed today here was that preparation to make history.
We all witnessed that preparation. And Susan, I want to bring you back in here to give us a sense of why it's so important for humans rather than machines to take this voyage.
You know, machines can do a lot, but they can't do everything. You know, back in the original Apollo days, machines could not have fit all the particular rocks per se. So we need the people and the machine. There is a role for both.
Dr. Oluseyi, I've been seeing you kind of, bouncing your knees around. Went from maybe nerves to just excitement. How are you feeling going forward?
Joy. I am feeling intense joy. I had some nervousness, I had some excitement, but now it's turned to joy. They're in orbit. The hardest, most dangerous part of the mission before re-entry is done. And now, they're getting busy doing the science. I can only imagine how ecstatic they are on board. They have tasks to do. But when you're a scientist, when you're an engineer, you love doing that work. And I have to say, as a former Navy seaman, go Navy, right? We got half the crew is former Navy.
And I understand, too, that Nat Geo was able to give the astronauts on board cameras, train them how to use cameras. This is the first time we're going to see smartphones in use inside that capsule. What kind of images? Because we all remember the black and white grainy images of the moon from more than 50 years ago. What kind of visuals will we be able to bring back 10 days from now?
You'd be surprised, right? When I was at NASA, I managed a program out of Johnson Space Center where they were actually using the astronauts' own photographs through the window of the space shuttle in order to do science here on Earth. And now they're going to do the same thing for the moon.
Dr. Oluseyi, our thanks to you, to all who has been a part of our team and our crew here at ABC News. We thank you so much. Artemis 2 is now on its way. We will follow its journey and track every milestone. For now, we return you to your regular programming. For some of you, that's World News Tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Lindsay Davis.